Hello, everyone. This is Catherine with Community CPA. Hope you are all doing well. As always, we have our webinars to help educate the business community. And Thursdays are kind of our unique days where we always invite a guest speaker to come to talk about small business resources, to share topics and information pertaining to minority and small business. So today our topic, of course, is on branding. So marketing, we're going to talk about that piece of the marketing efforts for a small business. And of course, that is an important piece of getting your name recognized and known in the community. So today with us, we have Doug Choi. He's from Happy Medium. So Doug, thank you for being here with us today. I appreciate your time.
It's my pleasure.
Awesome. So Doug is the creative director with the agency. So Doug, I wanted to hear a bit about you and your background, and then we can kick it off of why is branding important?
Yeah, sure. So I've been moving around a lot lately. I just actually moved to Minneapolis in April. So I've been exploring the Twin Cities for a little bit, but that was after I think around 9 years in Des Moines, Iowa, where the digital agency Happy Medium is based. So now I'm doing the remote work thing. So I'm sure I'm having some challenges that other people are having as well with that. But I got started in design. Design is sort of my second attempt at a career. But I went to grad school. I went to Iowa State. I got a master's with a concentration in design from Iowa State, which was a fun time to really learn that, really combine that with my kind of previous college experience in film and media studies. So, but I've been working in design for, I think it's been 12 years, maybe 13 years. So it's been a while. I've been in it for a long time. And I would say that my specialties involve, branding, digital design, and then, what we do a lot is a lot of consulting and a lot of strategy. So, yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. So yes, as it pertains to branding, what is its relevance with small businesses and businesses in general, and relation to the overall business marketing efforts? Where is that placement?
Yeah, so I want to clear up, I think, a couple of common misconceptions that people have. When the word brand comes up, people think of certain brands, they think of certain names, and ultimately, I think what they often think of first is also the logo itself, right? When someone says Coca-Cola, you see the red can with the little stripe through it, and you see this logo. When I say Nike, you think of the swoosh, and you see the letters there, right? And that's, I think, a big misconception that a lot of people have, is that a brand is a logo. And that is, for a lot of people, that seems true, but it's not quite true. And so I want to clear up what a brand actually is. And branding and a brand is essentially, it is the sum, perception of everyone who knows about your brand and what they think of it. That's what it is. It's not the logo. The logo is a part of your brand, and it's an attempt to control what people think of your brand, but it is not your brand. Your brand is the responsibility of you and everyone else out there in the public. And so what I will tell you right now, if you're running a business, you already have a brand. That's the secret to it. Your brand already exists. As long as you have customers, as long as you're putting yourself out there and people know that you're selling something and they're buying something, you have a brand already. Now, whether that brand is good, whether that brand is accurate, whether that brand is positive or negative, and so many different factors, that's kind of what branding is controlling that and measuring that and trying to figure out how to move things where they need to go.
Yeah, so I think that's a great framework to talk about it, for sure. So in terms of thinking through your brand, how do you identify what that is then? If it's
yeah. So like I said, it's other people's opinions, right? It's other people's feelings of it. And so I would say that I think a really good way of understanding what your brand is understanding why people are buying things from you. And it's difficult, I think, in small businesses, especially because I think in so many cases when you have a business, sometimes the business is you. Sometimes people buy things because you're you. Maybe you're very charismatic. And that's why people buy from you, and they're friends with you. They love spending time with you, and they, shops especially, you see all these like boutique shops here and there, and people come there sometimes for the interaction, with the person. It's same thing for, even grocery stores have a similar kind of issue with this. And like, yes, people are there to buy the products, but oftentimes people are at grocery stores also to, well, I mean, pre-pandemic, they were there to also hopefully run into other people that they knew, right?
Right.
Especially in smaller grocery stores. And so like that's a part of it. And so sometimes your brand is you. And if you are just starting out, that's often going to be pretty close. And so you have to think about, well, if your brand is you, then what do people think about you? Why are people buying from you? What is it about you that is so attractive to people? Once you get away from that, once you start building something that's apart from yourself, which is something that a lot of people kind of struggle with, that becomes a little more difficult. And then you really kind of have to, I'd say, like, talk to people. I think that's the most important thing. You actually have to observe people and how they react to your product, the thing that you're selling, or you have to talk to them. You have to ask them. And this is where charisma can be very, very powerful, or those strong relationships that you have with your customers. It can be very, very valuable to have that relationship, because you can ask them. And if you have the right relationship, they will tell you. And then you will start to understand what your brand is. But other than that, if you can't ask, like I said, observe. You have to try to see their behavior around the product that you're selling them, or the service that you're selling them. And then, there are other things. There's reviews. People leave reviews. That's also, an outgrowth or an indication of what your brand is and what that might be saying. But yeah.
Awesome.
Does that help?
Yes, it does, for sure. So when somebody is going about trying to, I guess, formally create a brand identity, right? Instead of just informally, is, people doing transactions with you. What are some of the main considerations that they should go through, and what are you, when you talk to clients, is that process like?
Yeah, so I think a really important thing, so this is where we're kind of getting to the logo, right? What people think of as brand. Is when you're talking about a brand identity, or just sometimes we just call it an identity, that's where we're talking about the logo, but also everything that comes with it. And so, once again, just if you were to imagine that you were a very small shop and people were buying things from you, if you just had a small stand, you are very often your brand, and then the products also represent your brand, and the experience that people have buying your hot dogs or something, that's the brand, right? But then, like, let's say you scale up. Let's say now you're selling your hot dogs or what have you in like a store, right? So then part of your brand is the package that product comes in, right? How does it look on the shelf? And so that's where identity becomes really, really important, because you as the business owner are no longer the person directly selling to people, right? You can no longer represent your product in everywhere all at once, right? And that's the challenge. And that's where identity comes in really important. And so having an identity, or specifically a logo that is recognizable, that is like hopefully meaningful and sending the right message, that's where that becomes really important. And so, that's where it's helpful to have a brand manual that kind of defines, like, hey, this is your logo. This is what it looks like. These are the colors that it uses. This is the typography, like the letters that go along with it. And this is how it should look when it's, in packaging. This is how it looks when we send an envelope out. This is how it looks on the website. That's what a brand manual is. And that can be really, really valuable, because if you don't have anything like that, then the branding process itself, having that identity manual or that brand manual, is helpful in two ways. Like, one, it's important to be consistent. So if you're inconsistent with your brand and how it's represented in the world, that's what we call sort of like brand drift. So if you can imagine, think of it this way: if you have a store and sometimes you're open and sometimes you're not, that's inconsistent. And so when people come by, they're hoping you're open, but when you're not open at a consistent way, or you don't communicate when you're open, people have a very negative opinion of your brand all of a sudden, because you're very unreliable. That's a form of communication. And similarly, if you have a package of cookies, and in one store it's orange, and another store it's green, then they wonder like, well, why is that green? It's the same one, right? And and if they see another one that's blue, then they start to get confused, and then it starts to feel like maybe not everyone's doing everything right there. So like a lot of what branding is communicating, professionalism as an example, or communicating all sorts of other aspects or emotional kinds of concepts to people.
Right.
So, yeah.
So I'm sure you run across this in your line of work, but I'm sure as businesses come to you, they're often at a point where they're growing and scaling, correct? So how does a business like have a cohesive brand when there's like multiple branches, more people, right?
Yeah.
And
that's that brand manual that I talked about. Now there's having a brand manual, which is just saying like you have a document. Sometimes this is a living document that you can edit and change. But you have this brand manual, and the idea is everyone should follow it. There's another thing called governance, which is like you have to make sure that it's enforced. So if a manager in one store stops following the brand manual, you have to have some penalties for them. You have to reprimand them somehow. Or there needs to be some sort of incentive on the other side to actually follow the brand manual. And so like if you think about McDonald's, big franchise, this isn't technically branding, but they have a gigantic operational manual for their franchises, and it has to be run this way. It's the same thing for brands, and they have a brand side of that where like you have to follow these things, and you can only choose these options, and that's because of that consistency thing. Now, that manual is really helpful, like I'd say in two ways. Like one, like I said, the consistency, but the other side is internal. So like if you think about the consistency is very valuable externally, but internally it streamlines a lot of operations. So like a lot of what happens in small businesses when they're trying to develop their brand is they'll make a decision on Monday and they'll say, I like this. And then on Tuesday, they'll be like, I don't like that anymore. I like this instead. And then on Wednesday, it changes again. And that's what makes things really, really, really messy. If you decide beforehand, if you set in stone what your brand is supposed to be visually represented by, and even tonally, how you speak to people and other things like that, then you no longer have to make those decisions day to day. The decision is locked in and you just have to execute that. And it's much easier for other people. Once again, like the franchise manual, those rules are set in stone, and it means that you don't have to make those decisions. You can spend your time making other decisions.
Absolutely.
And look, a lot of you, I imagine, didn't get into this business to do the branding portion of this necessarily. You have an actual operation for a business that you are very focused on making successful. And that part probably isn't what you're focused on. You may realize it's important, but you probably don't want to spend your day thinking about it. So that's where branding can be really, really helpful. It makes those decisions for you.
Absolutely. So when you think about some of those challenges that people face when they think about creating or strengthening their brand, assuming they're not part of a big corporation where that's already lined up, what are some of these hurdles that they have to go through, and how should they go about addressing those?
So I would say I think the challenge that people come to me and like other designers, with, is that they just don't feel like it fits anymore. It's like a bad shoe, right? Maybe it's the wrong color, maybe it's the wrong style, maybe it doesn't have the right function, maybe it's just very, very old, or maybe very, very old fashioned for what you want to do. And that happens. That's no one's fault. Sometimes the times change, and then sometimes you as a company or you as a business, you change. Maybe something strategically is different for you. Maybe the market shifts and you have to adapt in a different way. Maybe you need a different kind of customer all of a sudden. This happens a lot in business. And so that is a really good reason for a brand to want to shift a little bit for a change to happen. And especially from a small business growing to a medium business, or just scaling in any sort of way, sometimes you need to make some changes for that. And so when you feel like it's no longer saying the right things about you, that's when you need to change. That's when you need to start considering, maybe I need to talk to someone, hire someone, or do a lot of, look, I know not everyone has a budget for this, but if you can't hire someone or talk to someone about it, then I would say that there's very introspective things that you can do. Like I already mentioned, start talking to your customers more, ask them what they think, observing how they react. to your product, and you might be able to glean some good information on that will help you push your brand in the next direction. But as far as how to address that, like I said, it's you've got to do it yourself, which is tough and will eat up a lot of your time, or you have to hire someone. As far as like the hiring part, like if you're just starting out, you might hire, let's say, a freelancer, like a single person who will do some work, or sometimes they might have other people that they work with and they can pull together a team, kind of like a bank heist, I guess. And then, and they'll help you out. You could hire an agency or a design firm, which is like what I'm at, a company where we're kind of set up to offer specific services, and they can often help you with branding and as well as like other things as well. And then, yeah, I mean, those are basically the two levels, and there are small and big versions of all of those. There are freelancers that are just starting out, that are maybe in college still, and they need something for their portfolio. And there are freelancers that are very expensive because they're very good at what they do. Similarly with companies, same thing. So, yeah.
Awesome. So any other final, tips and suggestions regarding branding that you've seen with people that you've worked with or clients, in terms of either struggles or recommendations that you have?
Yeah, I would say that I think the introspection part, I think, is important. Being able to look inwards and understand why you feel a certain way, especially, like I said, if you're a small business and you're just starting out, you have to do some self-discovery to understand like what you want and why you want it. Otherwise, any conversation even with a professional is just like, you're just throwing darts. You don't know what you're going to hit. It's very, very random. And so I would say, like, I think a good recommendation if you want to build the visual part of your brand is go online, go to like Pinterest or something. Start typing in logo and like what your business does, and look at other logos. And then you save the ones that you like. And then you have a Pinterest board full of all the logos and all the things that you like. And then you have that board and you look at it and you say, well, why do I like this? And then you have to record, like, I like this because it looks strong, or I like this because it looks affordable, or I like this because it looks fast, and you have to understand why you like certain things, because at that point you're the business. You have to understand why you like certain things. And when you understand that, then going to a designer or going to an agency becomes very, very easy. Because if you know what you want, then they can communicate with you and understand what that is very, very easily. I will tell you right now that the cost of hiring a designer or anything to work on your branding is less about the time it takes to, cut everything out and make everything and actually, play around on a computer. That takes a little bit of time, but primarily in the beginning with new businesses or new designers, communication or miscommunication is the #1 bill.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's what costs the most. It's no, I don't like that. Let's try this again, or let's try B, let's try C. It's the miscommunication, the lack of communication that costs a lot of money. So if you want to stay on a budget, understand, do the work yourself, understand what you like, understand how to communicate it, and then that will make your bill a little bit cheaper. And your designer will appreciate it as well. Yeah,
of course. I guess it depends on where you are in terms of that process, that discovery process, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sure the designer can help with some of those questions.
Yeah, generally an experienced designer or an experienced design firm, they will have a process for getting those answers out of you. They will do a workshop or something, and they have a method for understanding, and especially if you're a larger company, getting everyone to align around what they want.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, which is difficult if it's a big group.
Yes. More people, sometimes it just takes longer.
Yeah.
I know we have some attendees here, so if anybody has questions regarding branding as part of the larger marketing efforts, please do feel free to pop it in the chat or raise your hand. Yeah, thank you for your comments so far, Doug. So I know that probably over time, branding has changed, through different modern markets, correct? So can
Mhm.
you speak about that and where it's important to have your brand visible?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think it kind of depends on the scale of your business. Once again, if you're just a hot dog stand, there's nothing wrong with just having a hot dog stand, by the way. But if you're something very small and very localized, you don't necessarily need all the advertisement. You have some visibility. You have hopefully what is a sustainable model with the people that are around you. But yeah, as you scale, you might need things like advertising. And it goes back to that point that I mentioned before about having that brand manual, about having those guidelines, in that if you want to advertise, if you want to run a digital campaign that puts thousands of display ads on websites that people like, that people who have interests in what your business does, then that ad is gonna have to be designed. And if you don't have a brand manual, then you're basically starting with a blank page. And so that having a brand established really helps make all those marketing initiatives a lot easier for you or your marketing team or anything like that. Having those standards means that they don't have to make decisions that have already been made. And then they can spend their creative effort on making that campaign, making that effort, making that sale or whatever that you're wanting to get out there, making that as good as possible, rather than, well, what should this look like? That should mostly already be answered, but it's just about, like, let's put our effort into making this as good as it can be, rather than what is the foundation of this. So branding it's honestly, it's infrastructure is I think how you can look at it. It's infrastructure. It's the streets and roads, it's the signs, it's the sewer, it's the water and electric. That's what it is. And
It
it
gives you
helps
a
make
great
sure,
framework, right?
yeah, that's what branding is. So
Awesome. Well, thank you, Doug. I really appreciate your time and your insight on this. And I will connect you with our viewers after. So again, really appreciate learning from you. So
yeah, thanks for having me on.
yes, hope you have a great rest of the day. We'll
Yeah.
wrap it up now. And then again, if anybody has questions, please feel free to email me. Doug, what is the best way that they can contact you?
You can contact me on my work email, Doug, DOUG, at itsahappymedium.com. That's ITSAHAPPYMEDIUM. I'll put it in the chat. How about that? That's just a very long. That is maybe a branding issue, but
I think it does stick though. So
yeah,
it's not
yeah. Happymedium.com. I think the last time we checked, it was like $40,000 to buy the domain. So another piece of advice: if you come up with the name, make sure you check the domain as fast as you can. Sometimes people will sit on that and take it from you. So
yeah. Okay. Thanks, Doug. I really appreciate it. And then we will connect soon.
all right. Thanks, everyone.